all the time to the government. You got to be able to take care of yourselves. And when you literally have gold mines, nickel mines, every type of critical mineral that the world wants, and you're saying, no, I don't want to touch that. By the way, give me money. Not going to happen.
That was Ontario Premier Doug Ford this past week making what some call racist remarks relating to our people's opposition to his economic legislation. Anin Bojo. My name is Johnny Hawk, and this is Zaasakwe for the week of June 18th to the 21st. This is Zaasakwe, a war cry to arm the resistance with knowledge. Welcome, relatives. It's the end of the week. And this week we look at some of the contradictory statements and actions, not by Canadian politicians, but Indigenous politicians, in regards to the growing movement against provincial and federal legislation to get at our lands. Okay, let's start with Doug Ford's apology this week. That happened on Thursday evening. Should chiefs accept an apology and believe him after saying they don't?
And again, Grand Chief, I want to repeat it again. I sincerely apologize if I've offended anyone.
We acknowledged, all of our chiefs have acknowledged and accepted in that room today the Premier's apology.
I've also always said, anytime I go to First Nations communities, they treat me like gold.
Why so reluctant to take the government at its word here?
We don't believe them. To put it simply, we don't believe their words.
These Indianac politicians have been making statements in the media where they are using the grassroots as leverage, making threats of blockades. However, they themselves never engage in such actions nor support, and actually distance themselves from such direct actions when they are being engaged by the people. So who are they to make such statements?
Predictions of unrest.
There will be, closures, blockages of mines, roads.
They are prepared to take action. There will be conflict on the ground.
What might that conflict look like?
Anything and everything that will make this government listen to us.
The next step is we're going to shut down the Ring of Fire. Whatever that means, whatever we can do, we're going to shut it down.
The First Nations have also threatened to blockade highways to make their point, leading to cautionary words from the Premier.
You can't break the law, simple as that. If any of us go stand and block the highways, they need to move on or they'll be dealt with appropriately.
Chiefs and the grassroots have also been calling this growing fight Idle No More 2.0. But if we're going to call it that, remember, Idle No More never stopped the bill at that time in 2012, which got everybody to rise up and which became law, which is currently doing the things it intended to do, and where everybody went back to being idle. Idle No More was also a movement hijacked by the chiefs who sold the people out at the 11th hour and collaborated with government.
And if history was to tell us anything, in 2012, there was a bill introduced that had the same language as Bill 5, Bill C-45, which sparked the grassroots movement of Idle No More. We are staring down the barrel of Idle No More 2.0.
That was Union of Ontario Indians Regional Chief Scott McLeod. On Friday, June 13th, CTV News reported that Scott was invited by the OPP to go and brief them at their provincial headquarters in Aurelia in regards to Indigenous opposition to the legislation and what OPP can expect from our people, especially those on the ground, grassroots. Scott is reported to say shutting down the economy of Ontario is not off the table, and that if police want to avoid another Dudley George, they need to understand First Nations position. Now, why couldn't Scott McLeod refer to the Oka crisis or Gustafson Lake rather than use a dead relative as leverage? Scott McLeod is a chief for Nipissing First Nation, a regional chief of the 21 Indianac Chiefs organization, where in 2022, the Union of Ontario Indians were pushing for their communities to accept a self-government agreement with Canada, which many felt was a termination of their inherent rights. The key negotiator at this time for the Union of Ontario Indians was Martin Bear of Onduk Omniconning. Martin Bear is heavily connected to the mining industry. Martin Bear went into First Nations of the Union of Ontario Indians to alter their communities' education constitutions, to restructure them as the needed band constitutions so communities could fit requirements to push this agenda through in their communities. So the question is, how can we believe some of these chiefs? Scott McLeod in his own community helped put in the First Nation lands management regime and develop land codes where he now invited after that Ontario Ministry of Natural Resources into his community to criminalize his own people for exercising their inherent rights.
Scott worked for the MNRF for 17 years before he became chief. On this morning, I caught them staking out our property. On other occasions, I've caught them on our properties, on our docks. They steal nets, fishing rods, coolers.
So Clayton was just here. I think you just missed him. You know Clayton.
Scott McLeod is now allowed in Ministry of Natural Resources on reserve land now.
So our job is to do an inspection to determine whether people are fishing.
Yeah, do you think you're going to do an inspection here? I don't fucking think so, buddy.
I'm sorry. Well, hey, that's our job. Sorry, what was your name?
We talked to a lawyer, and he's explained to us that what you are doing are breaking our inherent rights. You're interfering with treaty rights. Everything that our chief and council has told you has been done against what the people have been wishing.
It's all being hoodwinked, lied to. You don't even know it, Ryan.
Yeah. Anyways, our point is that we're still allowed to fish, regardless of whatever measures you put in front of us. We're still allowed to continue our fishing activities in accordance how we see.
That our communities are not against creating an economy or to be part of a national economy.
We, in our particular treaty territory, the Robinson-Huron Treaty Territory, we have always retained underlying title.
In 2018, 7 First Nations involved with the Williams Treaty accepted a $1.2 billion settlement, which extinguished their title to 13 million acres. So this is what these chiefs are pushing on the people and accepting, and a lot of our own people are accepting. They're not understanding these settlement agreements. This also includes the Robinson-Huron Treaty annuities case. When you look at these agreements, they're acknowledging Canada has the rule over them because the doctrine of discovery is case law through Section 35. It's a precedent, so that acknowledges Canada's jurisdiction over our lands and our people. So when our people make these agreements, that's what they're agreeing to. And these agreements themselves, they ask that our people extinguish their inherent rights or underlying title to these territories through these Indian Act chiefs. So this is what's happening. A lot of our people who are being vocal, are opposing the very same thing that they accept in our communities. So again, I just wanted to share too, of these Indigenous politicians need to be speaking the legal foundation in when these kind of issues come up, or when the king comes or the pope comes, to say that Canada, for long story short, in the 1982 Canada Act from the UK, who had no authority and jurisdiction to make such a legislation for the people of Canada, that Canada Act, which created the 1802 Constitution and the 1867 Constitution Act, required that all provinces make 3 proclamations, which didn't happen. So all these laws, Bill C-5 of the federal government that's about to be ratified, and this Bill 5, Unleashing Ontario's Economy Act, are invalid and unlawful because they're created under this illegitimate constitution of Canada. So they need to bring about the legal facts of Canada, how they have no jurisdiction within our territories. It's been Johnny Hawk for Zaasakwe, and we say have a happy Indigenous Peoples Day. Miigwech, and stay tuned on our next episode next week. Miigwech and Bamapi.